Thanks everybody for attending our Place Scrutiny Committee tonight. So we're going to start as usual with our declarations of interest, if anyone has any. And I'll take that as a no. Thank you very much. Item 2 is urgent business. I don't think anything. Right, no, I didn't think so. So there's no urgent business tonight. Item 3, apologies for absence.
Yes, Chairman, Councillor Zaman, Councillor Sylvester's in place, and Councillor Hewitt as exec member. Are there any more from the floor? No. Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. Item 4, minutes of the last meeting, which have been distributed. If they're all the correct record, can we a proposer and a seconder, please?
Move.
Thank you.
Is there a seconder?
Here.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yep.
And we move swiftly on to item 5, which is the committee work programme.
Thank you, Chairman. The report members have had sets out the items for all future meetings. The next meeting is scheduled for 10th of February next year, and it's for comment and observation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So if anyone's got any comments or observations, please let us know. Otherwise, we'll move on to item 6. Now, I'd just like to say John Kelly is here to answer any questions relating to highways and engineering, but he can't wait, can't stay till the end. So if anyone's got any questions related to highways and engineering, we can deal with those as they come up, and then John will be able to leave happy that he's answered all of our questions. Okay, so let's move on to item 6 then. So recycling performance and household engagement presentation.
Yes, Chairman. I can see Tom Albert in the attendance. I can't see Danielle Dixon yet, or Joe Iverson to number 7, but I think the director said that Tom is starting anyway. So
okay, thank you.
John Duckett, are you able to load the recycling presentation, please? Thank you.
Yeah, it's on. I can see it.
Good evening, everyone. Danielle is just currently logging on, so she will be with us shortly. So this is a recycling performance and household engagement presentation for the Environmental Services Department. My name's Tom Alberts. If you can go to the next slide, please. I'll just start with a brief introduction. During the 2020 and 21 year, by the end of this year, we'll have emptied 40 million bins from just over 125,000 properties. The budget for the department this year is just under 29 million. As you can see, the majority of that budget is spent on waste disposal costs. There's also 440,000 that's allocated to Greater Manchester Combined Authority, which is mainly used for marketing and communications, and it's something I'll be looking at improving value for money moving forward. As a member of Greater Manchester Combined Authority, our aim is to increase recycling to 55% by 2025 and 65% by 2035. Now, the way we'll achieve that is through engagement with residents, promoting healthy recycling and challenging behaviours. Whilst doing that, the aim is to obviously reduce the tonnage of residual waste and also therefore the disposal bill. Next slide, please. As you can see, our target has increased. This year we are just at 5.5%, which is nearly a % increase on last year. And it does demonstrate we've got a way to go to achieve our target of 55% by 2025. Communication behaviour change is absolutely key, and how we engage in our residents moving forward is going to help us to improve that. You will also note that the residual waste has sadly increased this year, and that's mainly due to COVID. But I'll cover that in the following slides. Next slide, please. You'll all Ready, be aware, our department does do a lot of recycling promotion across the borough. Social media, website, door-to-door engagement, roadshows and events. We also make contact with schools and education authorities, university and the college to really promote healthy recycling from a young age. And there is also quite a large take-up rate in our commercial customers who come to us because we offer a wraparound service that our competitors don't necessarily do. Schools, for instance, are really keen on recycling, and they come to us. They're attracted to our commercial waste service due to our offering of recycling and how we dispose of things. Next slide, please. So it's 2020. You would all be aware of this word. COVID-19 has presented us with some significant challenges across the borough and the region. With people isolating and working from home, it's increased the amount of waste that is generated. People would ordinarily dispose of waste at workplaces or in public bins, but unfortunately all that waste is now coming through the waste stream, the domestic waste stream at homes, and it's led to some residents struggling to manage and concealing waste in our recycling bins, which unfortunately has led to a rejection of recyclable material. Now, I'll cover that in future slides, but it's definitely had an impact on things. We've also noticed a set out rate across the borough is stable, but has highlighted areas of the borough where residents are failing to present the bins on a frequent basis, such as every 2 weeks or even every month. Next slide, please. As you can see on the graph, unfortunately, due to people being at home and generating more waste, you'll see a sharp increase in rejected pulpable waste, which is paper and card. Also, what's impacted on this is over the last 12 months, Suez have really increased their inspections on loads and are very keen to reject loads that contain contamination. Now, between April and November, the rejected loads stands at 144 tonnes of rejected pulpable material. This is compared with 4.5 tonnes for the same period the previous year, which I'm sure you can agree this is a sharp increase. Monetary impact on the council has led to an increased disposal cost of just over 14,000 at a rate of £99.50 per tonne. It would be higher than that, but the staff at the tipping sites do have a resource on hand that can quickly jump in and look through loads and quickly remove easy to reach material. Unfortunately, where it's mixed in throughout the loads, they don't have the time nor the resource to go through and completely clean all the loads, which again leads to our number of rejected loads. Next slide, please. Now, waste composition analysis carried out in 2018-19 has demonstrated we do have a high percentage of residents and material that's placed correctly in the beige bin, such as paper, card and cardboard. Unfortunately, there's still a high percentage, just 18%, consisting of a variety of contamination, and that contamination can range from anything from general household waste to bottles to food and other non-recyclable material. Next slide, please. As you can see, the picture on the right illustrates a standard contaminated bin. Unfortunately, some residents are quite brash and just present bins like that. Some a little bit more mindful, and we're seeing an increase in concealed contamination where, because they're struggling with the waste, they're actually placing it at the bottom of the bin, then covering it up, and because it's quite low down in the bin, our staff can't necessarily see it. And although we've had recycling in the borough for quite some time, we still encounter residents who are unsure what they can recycle and what they can't. As I've discussed, struggle to manage their residual waste. They also deliberately fill other people's bins so that they've removed the problem from their bin to somebody else's. And there is a high amount of contamination in flats. They have large 1,100 litre bins that are often unmanned and unmonitored. So unfortunately, some residents do take the opportunity to contaminate them too. Next slide, please. Now this slide demonstrates the areas, the boroughs, over best performers and worst performers throughout the borough, with Crompton, Farnworth, Harper Green, Kersley, Tongue-with-a-Hoff being the worst performers in recycling, and Astley Bridge, Bromley Cross, Heaton Lostock, Horwich Blackrod, and Little Lever and Darcy Lever being some of our better recyclers. Now, it's not all doom and gloom. Basically, what this means to us, this slide, is that allows us to focus on our response on these specific areas, and give them greater education and greater support to help them wards increase their recycling and hopefully bring everything down to a level playing field. Next slide, please. So our team has been working with the Greater Manchester Combined Authority to create a paper and card campaign due to the amount of contamination. Now, it's worth recognising contamination isn't just within our borough; it's across Greater Manchester. So recognising that, we've worked to design the Recycle Right campaign. And that's going to consist of door-to-door engagement with residents who are regularly contaminating their bins. Just paying attention to the previous slide where we're looking at our most challenging areas. You know, this is where we will focus on initially. We're going to be working with housing associations, management companies, and landlords, and put some of the onus on them as well to take the responsibility alongside us and have a joint approach. We're going to be sending an education leaflet sent to all households, and we're going to improve the signage. Now, at the bottom of the screen, you can see an illustration where it demonstrates what our campaign will look like. There's a lot of visuals there, so people who may not have English as a first language or who may struggle to read, they can quite clearly see a visual there as to what we want and what we don't want, and it is in line with everything that's going across Greater Manchester, but also previous campaigns we've done. Next slide, please. So from the 1st of December, I'm pleased to announce that Bolton Community Transport have won the tender to deliver our bulky waste collection. Now, those of you who may not know, Bolton Community Transport is a local company that employ local adults, some with learning difficulties. The items they collect are repaired and reused in a local warehouse based at Lecturers Close, which is just behind Sainsbury's in the town centre. They also provide start-up packs for residents on low incomes and provide excursions for breaks for the elderly with the monies that they raise. So it really does add local value to us, to them, and to our residents and the community. With Christmas approaching, there is also an agreement where there will be a charge of £16 where Bolton Community Transport will collect Christmas trees from households across Bolton. Other ways that we provide that local support, add that local value, is providing free tips and permits to charity organisations and promoting charity shops on our website to really push the reuse and recycling of materials. And Greater Manchester will also be rolling out refuse shops across 3 household waste and recycling centres. That's going to start by the end of March. And as a trial period, you know, if it's successful, future rollouts are planned. I mean, I don't know if it's like yourselves, you may arrive at the tip most weekends like I do, and you know, as you're driving up the ramp, you look to your right hand side and you see some great furniture often left to the side, and you know, hopefully this rollout and this scheme will, you know, really improve the recycling and reuse and repurpose of unwanted things that still have got a lot of life left in them. Next slide, please. So moving forward, our aim is to provide our recycling teams with refresher training. Most of our recycling teams are very well established. However, there's been some changes with staffing, and I think it's always good to train and refresh our workforce. And that includes checking for bins for contamination, tagging bins, and more importantly, logging contaminated bins on Bartek. That doesn't just help us, but it also helps our colleagues within the contact centre to increase their education and be a point of call and reduce some of us going back, reduce some complaints, you know, and really helps educate the customer at the point when they contact our organisation. We're also going to re-engage with residents because of COVID. Is hopefully there's light at the end of the tunnel with COVID. We'll re-engage with them by visiting schools, hosting roadshow events, door-to-door engagement, carrying out further waste audits. Next slide, please. Part of our future education campaigns also to engage with our housing associations, landlords and management companies. We all have a responsibility when it comes to recycling. It's for everybody's benefit, not just us within Bolton, but everywhere. And we're going to look at them providing support for us, with us, face to face, door knocking, and providing this combined approach and a combined response from not just the council but other organisations. We're also going to explore the inclusion of responsible waste management obligations in tenancy agreements, which is whereby we write a clause, or they write a clause in tenancy agreements to really put the responsibility and make it urgent about people recycling and their residents recycling, and the commitment that they have to not just themselves but everybody else. And moving forward over the coming months, we're going to be looking at the actual recycling policies. What can we do better? You know, is there a way that we can increase? Is there further ways to increase contamination? Can we reduce overfilled bins more? How do we respond to miscollections, obstructed access? That's quite a big thing in the borough at the minute. More people working from home, more cars on the roads, more obstacles blocking our vehicles' accesses. We'll also look at enforcement and how we react and what we can legally do. Next slide, please. There's also quite large campaigns that are happening, not just across Greater Manchester region, but also across the UK with RAP and the Waste and Recycling Strategy, which is looking at food waste, weekly food waste collections for every household, and also single-use plastic packaging with food producers and supermarkets. Now, that is a wide scale project, and we are looking for further guidance, and once further guidance is issued centrally, that will be released down to Greater Manchester, and then with Greater Manchester we'll issue a policy and look at how our approach is. But the hope is with the responsibility going to suppliers and food manufacturers for single-use plastics, where it's shown that they are taking a more active approach and they're taking more responsibility. Hopefully that responsibility will lead to a change in education with some of our residents. And we're also really keen, as suggested before, with increasing the bulky waste collection service and upcycling. It really is key. There's a lot of waste that we come across that you know is unnecessarily disposed of, and that has a long life left. So at this, I will ask for the next slide, and Daniela will take over. Thank you.
Just before we move on, I just want to see if there's any questions that would require John Kelly's comments. Because I know Councillor Heslop would like to ask a question.
Not a problem.
And Councillor Weatherby's indicated as well, Chairman.
Yeah, I've got Councillor Heslop, Councillor Peel and Councillor Weatherby. I suppose if we go through these questions now, then at least we get them out of the way, just in case John needs to speak. So Councillor Heslop, please.
Thanks, Chair. Thank you for that, Tom. Have you got a pen and paper there? Matt?
I do, yes, I do.
Because I'm going to bundle them together, and hopefully you can address each one. I'll try to be short as possible. I was intrigued by the cost of disposal, actually, and was wondering just how much the cost, the breakdown of these costs, you know, the recyclables versus the conventional grey bin waste. One thing that I do want you to consider is this 440,000, and you're saying your efforts are concentrated on that to try to reduce that from Greater Manchester. I'm no huge fan of Greater Manchester CA, but quite often this is used for branding, and I think we've got a wonderful thing in this borough. We've got our own, or could have our own campaigns in the 4 or 5 areas that you mentioned that make really good use of this £440,000, as opposed to it going to Greater Manchester, which may be also interested in branding Greater Manchester rather than the issue at hand. And that's even been done at a local level, I think, and notably the Love Bolton Hate Litter. The message is to reduce litter more than anything. Suez, I'm intrigued, why is it written in the contract terms that they can just intervene to such an extent and audit this waste? Are there any parameters with Suez for what for how often they intervene and how proactive they are with us into reducing that? But I'm just wondering if they just penalise it. It seems a bit punitive of Suez, somebody that we hold a contract with. And the final thing is that I want to you to give me some idea of if you have this information about the national efforts to target the producers of the waste. Well, mainly the supermarkets that are distributing all of this waste. We've heard it from Marks and Spence years ago that there is no option B, and they're reducing, they're planning to cut this waste down, this packaging down. But it seems to have, I don't know, it's flattened, and I'm wondering what is going on nationally to make particularly supermarkets responsible for all of this waste, for an awful lot of waste that is produced in this country. Okay, thanks for that.
With regards to the businesses that are producing the waste, I'm going to quickly cover that in the waste and resource and waste strategy, because that is coming nationally from DEFRA. So am I okay to leave that part for when I come round to do that part of the presentation, if that's okay?
That's fine.
Is that all right?
I may have read the PowerPoint presentation before, but I know you touched on it, Tom. So yeah, I'll leave it for you for later, Daniela.
All right, thank you.
Okay, so in relation to a breakdown of the costs, I can definitely share that with you. I can share that with everybody. I don't actually have that to hand at the minute, but I think that when you're looking at costs, it's good to see them wrote down. So if you can bear with me, I'll arrange for them to be sent across to you. The 440,000 spend with Greater Manchester. It's a very good point you raised, and this is something that I've personally highlighted and the team's personally highlighted, where we can increase the value for money, what we get contribution wise back from the Greater Manchester Combined Authority, and we'll be in discussions over the next few weeks as how to improve that. But things I would like to see, recycling affects the whole borough, and you will know that on the slides there isn't any specific ward that doesn't suffer from recycling contamination. With COVID here, it's affected across the board, but my hope is to use that money better, to get them to fund targeted campaigns for Bolton, and that'll be part of the conversation that I hold with them over the coming weeks. With regards to Suez interventions and checking the waste, they are quite within the rights to check waste, and what we found is since the contracts changed over from Viridor to Suez, they've definitely had a more proactive approach when it comes to looking at contamination in the loads. They're a lot more on the ground, they're a lot more checking, and it also is affected by the markets that they feed into. You may have seen on the press, the foreign markets that Suez sell our recyclable materials to, their tolerance for contamination is becoming less and less. So as that becomes less and less, they need to be more proactive in recognising what's contaminated and what's not. I think there's also a wider message though, in that where it's negative, where there is a negative message, it's more proactive for us, because that allows us to highlight better areas better, and to be a bit more reactive with our approach. You know, whenever they reject a load, we can instantly relate it back to a specific crew. That specific crew, we know in the area where they are, and we can adapt our approach with that. So there are some positives with that. And finally, then on to the fourth point about national efforts. Daniela will cover that moving forward in the following slides.
Thank you for that, Tom.
No worries, thank you.
Yes, thank you very much. Our next speaker is Councillor Peel.
Thanks, Joe. And I think we're only halfway through the presentation, but it's been really interesting so far, Tom. So thanks for that.
Thank you.
I've got a couple of points. The first one, just this issue on this 440,000. My understanding was that if that money's being badged as money for education, advertising, etc., I thought that was with the GM Waste Disposal Authority for pro-recycling campaigns rather than the combined authority and branding. I'm not sure where that came from. What concerns me is one of the biggest reasons for our success in upping recycling is some quite clever and intensive education campaigns done by Bolton Council and also done by Waste Disposal Authority, really kind of getting into various different communities and tackling different issues. I'm not sure with the age of the new round of COVID cuts that we're going to face, which is going to affect our marketing and PR role in the council quite heavily, actually, from what I've seen. Whether or not this could be a case of cutting your nose off to spite your face, I think we've just got to be very careful there, because if we've got to reach these new targets in a few years, you know, let's not kind of throw out one of the most efficient ways of doing that. You're absolutely right what you said, Tom, about getting more value for money, and nobody would object to that. Another thing that does concern me, I mean, as hopefully all people in this meeting will be well aware, I'm a massive, huge fan of the work that the council does on this. I think we've made huge leaps and bounds against some intense opposition, some very unfair opposition over the years, and it's reaping the benefits for us all now. What does concern me is the rejected loads. As a result of more people being at home due to COVID. Now, in my mind, there's one of two reasons there. There's either an untapped problem that we weren't aware of to do with a serious lack of recycling education from a lot of people, or, and it's probably a mixture of both, those who were just about coping in terms of capacity prior aren't coping at all now they're at home. And that there's a strong argument there for, and you'll not like this, and Daniela won't like this at all, but there is a strong argument for a kind of more a temporary additional capacity for families who are working at home, because the system that we set up with the 120 litre fortnightly grey bin works with the average family. Those who couldn't cope obviously had the waste audit, and we've got thousands of people in Bolton who have additional capacity. That's now testing that system to its limits. It's not, I know it's not an easy one, but appreciate your views on that. And also, just one final question. When you put the list up of the wards where there were contaminated bins, it didn't surprise me at all. I mean, recycling has always been embraced more by more affluent areas, and that broadly does show that. There was one ward that looked massively out of kilter, and I'm not disparaging Runworth at all, but it showed Runworth as being one of the lowest of contaminated bins. I may be wrong, but I just checked that data because I think it's actually up there as one of the highest. It may just be a glitch in the graph.
Yeah, the The graph that you're showing, it doesn't, because I think on one of the questions as well, it doesn't show all the wards. They're just where we've had, when we've got to the disposal site, that's where they've rejected the loads. So I do apologise, not all wards are showing on there. The ones that aren't showing on there, we haven't had a rejected load from as of yet since April. But on the graph, it does show what the number of rejected loads, vehicle loads that we've had at those in those ward areas. So apologies for the confusion on that. Sorry.
So if it's okay, Councillor Peel, I just want to address the point that, you know, about the temporary arrangements about additional capacity. And, you know, I will say it's a valid point. Of course it is. I think with regards to this, my view on that would be, if COVID was a long-term thing, you know, and we're talking something that would be here for years, you know, there may be merits to that, and obviously I would need to discuss with the assistant director and everything about our strategy reacting to that. But I think with a changing environment where, you know, we are looking at the onset of, or we are there now, of mass testing and mass immunisations, I'd like to think, you know, we will start, or the country will start to get on top of things fast. There is also a monetary cost associated to allowing people temporary additional capacity, and it's where do you draw the line? I think our processes that we've currently got at the minute, where we look at people who are entitled to additional capacity, you know, that's something that we've worked with for a while, and that's a defined set of circumstances. We'd have to go back to the drawing board and look at where we draw the line on that. Now, you know, I mean, it's certainly open for discussion. However, like I say, with the monetary costs associated, and with the onset of hopefully light at the end of the tunnel with COVID, but also the fact is that not every household within the borough is contaminating their bins. We do have a large amount of residents who are recycling and who manage very, very well. So, you know, I'll take your comments away and certainly look at it further, of course I will. And with regards to the combined approach with the 440,000, your comments are completely correct. You know, we've got to be getting value for money for that. We've got to have this combined approach, and we've got to share resources to have this combined view of where we've been really successful with a local campaign, but reinforce that with a regional campaign too, and feed in with our other partnering authorities. I think we can reap a lot more value than what we're getting at the minute.
Thank you very much for that. Our next speaker is Councillor Weatherby.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Chair. Thank you very much, Chair. I've got a couple of questions really, and it's in conjunction with Councillor Peel's. And it's no surprise that Falmouth factors quite high on contaminated waste. Now, we have a lot of fly tipping, which is consistently all over social media, which I'm sure everybody else does. What is the cost, and I'm not sure whether you'd be able to answer this, of current costs of dealing with fly tips? Because, you know, we have a lot of, we class them as litter pickers, and the more you look at it, they are moving, you know, in excess of 10, 20, 30, 40 bags of waste where people have fly tipped and not done the right thing. That's one question. And the other question is, it says, develop a waste and recycling policy document. Are you saying there currently are no policies regarding contamination, overfilled, missed bin collections? And final point, we get a lot of complaints regarding missed collections, which is problematic in its at best of times. In the world of COVID, when everybody's working from home, it just impedes the situation. Thank you very much.
With regards to the fly tipping, the cost of disposal is the same. With the way the levy works, the cost of disposal is the same as what it showed on there at £99 per tonne. In regards to that one, with regards to the policies, we do have policies in place, but at the moment they're all in different reports. They're not all in one document. So moving forward, we are wanting to look at all the policies, review them, so that the customers know what they can expect from us and what we're expecting from them, and have them all in one document. So that is something that we're looking to do in the new year. And with regards to miscollections, we do have obviously a number of miscollections, and they may have gone up higher during COVID, but a lot of that has been because more people are obviously at home. We are experiencing a lot of access issues of getting the vehicles down there, getting down the streets, getting into the back streets. And when we have tried to challenge some residents and ask them if they can kindly move the vehicle so we can get access, we are finding that a lot of our crews now, where at the start of the COVID everyone was really supportive of us, are now turning aggressive and not being as friendly as what they were, and they're telling us where to shove our bins and shove our collections. So again, it is something we are looking at and we are trying to improve. With people working from home, it has had the additional impact of trying to gain access in some of the areas.
Sorry,
I've got,
sorry.
Sorry to interrupt. We've got John Dyson who'd like to come in and maybe able to supplement that response. John. Sorry, Councillor Weatherby.
I think you're muted, John. I can't hear you.
Sorry, thank you, Chair. It was just really to briefly pick up on the point regarding waste and recycling policies, and I think Danielle has referred to the fact that the council does have a series of policies in place, but in my experience what we would benefit from greatly, and this doesn't just relate to contamination, overfill bins, side waste. It actually relates to some of the broader issues that have also been discussed tonight. So, you know, from my perspective, one of the things that we want to do as a team, as Daniela says, as we move into the new year, is to bring together one single policy document, and this will absolutely tackle those issues around, obviously, as I say, contamination, one of the issues that Tom's focused on tonight. But it will also address issues around expectations on our residents in terms of when they present their bins, when they remove them from the curbside, the obligations that they have to enable or to ensure that we have reasonable access to the bins on the scheduled day of collection. It will pick up issues in respect of, say, for example, assisted collections that we have across the borough for some of our more vulnerable residents. So this is a really important piece of work, not just in terms of the policy itself and having a definitive reference point that we can use for both community engagement, but also for harder forms of enforcement moving forward. But it's an opportunity for us to clearly set out the expectations on our residents in respect of their contribution to sustainable waste management and really the positive behaviours that we would expect them to demonstrate, dare I say, to support the the council's wider ambitions with regard to climate change and sustainable environment. So I really just wanted to, as I say, make the point that it's absolutely about contamination, about behaviour change, but actually we have an opportunity through that policy documents or developing policy documents to actually draw in many other aspects of waste collection, which on a day-to-day basis can cause disruption to residents. So thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much for that, and thank you, Councillor Weatherby, for allowing that interruption. You can come back and continue if you wish.
Thank you, Chair. Sorry, it's probably the way I've asked the question. I understand the cost of the tonnage would remain the same, but have we got a breakdown of the increase of costs it's took to deal with the fly tip waste is sort of where I'm going to, because if that's costing more for us to deal with fly tips in addition to contaminated waste and things like that, then the cost is perhaps double, a third of that. Does that make sense?
Thanks, Councillor Weatherby. The service that you're talking about is actually our street scene service, and I think unfortunately the team tonight obviously only have the information available in respect of waste collection operations. We can absolutely take that request offline, and I think, to be fair, I absolutely get the point you're making. This is about actually, are we investing significant expense in our street scene teams returning to not just dispose of, but to clear copious amounts of fly tipping, and actually are there different ways that we could sort of, I guess, divert that expenditure which are perhaps more sustainable in the future. So if we can maybe take that offline, sorry, I'll chat with my assistant director colleague Kelly Hopkins, and we can perhaps bring that issue into a wider discussion offline, if that would be agreeable.
Thank you. Councillor Weatherby, have you any more questions?
No, that's absolutely fine. Thank you very much. Thank you for the response. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Right, so just to let you know, we've got Councillor Walsh, Councillor Warren, Councillor Brady and Councillor Darvish to speak about this first part. If anyone else indicates to speak, what I'm going to do, once Councillor Darvish has spoken, we're going to continue with the presentation, and then we'll get all the further questions afterwards. So thank you very much for that. Councillor Walsh.
Thank you, Chairman. Thanks, Chairman. Chairman, can I just come back to the issue of contaminated loads? As I understand it, we now have sufficient capacity to establish not just the round, but almost the location of contaminated bins. How far are we now progressing this? Have we, in recent weeks and months, pursued individual households with the penalties that we can impose? It's Section 46 that we can impose penalties for contamination on a repeated basis. Are they repeated? Are they one-offs in the main? And what action are we taking to address these particular households? So I think that's a hugely important factor in terms of reducing some of the overhead costs of the contaminated and polluted loads.
At the moment, we have been a bit restricted with the door-to-door engagement that we can undertake due to being in level 3 and then the lockdown that we had in November. We are trying to go out where possible, monitoring the bins. We are doing monitoring. It can be difficult to speak to. We can't speak to as many residents as we like, but for those where the bins are deliberately and heavily contaminated, we are going out and speaking to those residents, providing them with information on what can be recycled, what should not be in the bin, and what we've come across. And then we have advised them that any further contamination found in those bins, they will be issued with a Section 46. At the moment, the Section 46 comes under neighbourhood services, so at this moment in time I don't have details on that information, unfortunately, but I can go back and try and get that information for you to see if any have been issued during this period of time.
I think it would be useful, Chairman, if we could have that information, because again, I think in terms of the education process, I would have thought sent out a fairly powerful message that we are being robust in challenging those who are causing costs to fall on other council taxpayers. Because that, at the end of the day, is what is happening. The cost has to be borne by others.
Yes, thank you, Councillor. I'm sure that information can be disseminated to everyone. Next,
Chairman,
yes, sorry.
That information will be sent to me.
Right.
Also, if Tom sends me the information about cost of disposal breakdown, I'll send that round to members. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Our next speaker is Councillor Warren.
Thank you, Chair. I'll try and be really brief because I can talk for ages about waste. I'm becoming a right geek. It's really, really uncomfortable. But I just wanted to comment on what Councillor Heslop said regarding the levy. I just wanted to assure everybody that obviously I am a member of GM Waste, so I always put obviously the Bolton perspective forward from there as well. But I also attended a leaders meeting on Friday regarding the levy, and I actually challenged GM Waste management team in terms of giving us the best bang for our buck. because I think as a council we're expected to work smarter and cleverer to get the efficiencies that we need for the most for our council tax. And I also challenged Recycle for Greater Manchester, or GM Recycling, GM Waste, to also do the same. So I have said, obviously, in terms of the levy and how that then affects our council taxpayer, that I want to see them obviously working smarter and more efficiently so that we can get the best out of the levy, so that then we're getting the best for our money as well. So I just wanted to assure you on that. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that, Councillor Warren. Next speaker, Councillor Brady.
Thank you, Chair. I'll just get this video on. Right, going back to pulpable waste, I'm presuming that that's what goes in your beige bin, the paper bin. We've noticed a large increase in takeaways that previously put pizzas and whatever in cardboard containers, now putting wet food in them. And yet we're told that wet food, grease or anything contaminates paper. Am I correct in that?
Yes, you are. Yes.
Right. So what certainly has been asked the question is, as paper is compostable, why can paper rather contaminated with food not go in your green bin?
That's something that's agreed. Daniela will jump in with this in a second, but that's something that's been agreed with Greater Manchester. You know, all the councils feed into Greater Manchester Combined Authority. It's something that's been agreed across the region. But I'll let Daniela chip in with that, just give further information if that's okay.
Yeah, thank you.
Daniela, sorry, I just had to mute your microphone.
Sorry. Need to just double check my facts on this one. But we can't accept paper or the cardboard waste in the food waste because of the way that the food and garden waste is treated. I will feed back to Ian and give you the full facts of why you can't do it and give you the technical spiel, but there is a reason for it, and I just can't think of it at the top of my head, but I will send you that information if that's okay. I do apologise, but it's due to the process and the treatment of the food waste that we can't accept it. But I will give you the reasons why following this meeting, if that's okay.
It is great, and thanks. Like, I understand that, but I think when we're talking about education, and it's not just of residents, maybe it's about the businesses that are actually sending food out in these containers as well, that it's not environmental friendly, and to advise the customers that no, that cannot go in your paper bin, because a lot of people are completely unaware of it. And I'm pretty sure with what you're saying, that is a big source of contaminants. Yeah,
a lot of the takeaway packaging, we do need to do a lot of work with, and as further on in the presentation, we are talking about the single-use plastic and removing as much as possible within Greater Manchester, and that is one of the things that we will need to start working very closely with, because a lot of residents as well are, for some reason, one of the main contaminants in the beige bin is the polystyrene trays. And residents thinking that they're paper. So there is a lot of work that we need to do with both the residents on educating them as to what is acceptable, what is classed as pulpables as paper and card, but also we need to be working with the takeaways and the businesses that produce or buy this waste to use, and how we can try and reduce or eradicate that single-use, non-recyclable material that we've got.
Okay, thank you.
I'd just like to chip in on the back of that, if that's okay, Councillor Brady. We do have a commercial waste officer, and this is something that is on his target currently at the minute, which is engaging with our commercial waste customers from takeaways, of which we do have a lot of custom with them, and really pushing through that message that food waste should not be put in the paper bins. So it is something that is currently on target, and we are currently looking at minimising that, and I'll actually meet with him tomorrow and find out where we're getting with it. But it is on our radar, and that we're working towards reducing it already.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Brady and Tom and everyone else. Last speaker for now, for this section, Councillor Darvish. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you. I listened to Councillor Walsh's comments, and you know, I thought about that. I thought about agreeing with. I thought about exactly what Councillor Walsh was actually saying, because let's face it, Crompton, I know, has had its fair share of intervention. So people have actually been to the doorsteps with clipboards telling them exactly how they should be recycling, and it's not actually happened. So surely a much more stronger message should be there at the doorstep. But then I had a look at the graph, and the graph clearly shows a substantial increase in contamination from April, May onwards. And therefore, I think the timing would be wrong to be able to go and knock on the doors and actually say to people, identifying households and saying to them that, you know what, we've sent you the message before, you should be recycling a lot better, and actually talking about fines. I think it'd be the wrong time, but I think sooner or later that type of dialogue needs to actually happen. So these are just comments. The other comment I just want to make is about contamination and what Councillor Peel said. Now, Councillor Peel is actually correct. As soon as we knew that this is the trend, contamination is increasing because householders are, for whatever reason, hiding the black bin waste into the beige bin, etc. For whatever reason, they're actually doing this. We should have probably picked up on that and had some sort of capacity, simply because then there wouldn't have been that many rejected loads. And the truth is, it's not for Councillor Peel or any other backbencher to mention this at scrutiny. Might sound a bit critical, but it's actually officers who should have picked on the steep curve and actually realised that, you know what, there's a trend here, we need to do something about it. Because getting it to scrutiny and having the debate now is actually a bit too late. Obviously, times have changed now. Things have actually moved on, I think. So we've gone past that stage where we were able to do something, but it's actually for the officers to pick up on something like that, not for the councillors. Thank you. Those are just comments.
Thanks, Chair. I just wanted to just quickly, oops. Thank you. Yes, so I just wanted to quickly come back in just in relation to the issue of enforcement, and certainly Tom and Daniela will draw together information in respect of potential household enforcement. But I'm going to say, in order to manage expectation, I suspect, certainly in the time that I've been in the authority, which is circa 7 months now, that there hasn't been any enforcement in respect of contaminated recycling bins. I think that will be partly because of the reasons that Daniela has outlined in terms of capacity during this COVID period. But to be fair to our team in regulatory services, they have been absolutely full stretch in relation to all things COVID-19, in particular the hospitality sector, and a number of competing demands on the team. My own thoughts are that this is an incredibly important part of the education and enforcement process, and certainly when I reflect back on the previous discussion regarding a composite set of household waste and recycling policies, I believe, in terms of almost phased approach, the right thing to do here is to develop a suite of documents. They will inevitably, or I suspect, be part of a PDG, and members would have the opportunity to comment on the contents of the policies and the approach that the council proposes moving forward. But there may then be an opportunity to, shall we say, relaunch, refresh the council's position with regard to sustainable waste management and the consequences of failing to act in a responsible manner with regard to disposal of waste. So I think that, from my perspective, would probably be the way or the opportunity that we have moving forward to address some of these more difficult issues, because there is no doubt about it that soft engagement, soft enforcement through education, raising awareness, through media campaigns is absolutely the right way, and we've done that with a great degree of success in Bolton thus far. are. But equally, I think there is an opportunity, as I say, to refresh through the policy document that was alluded to in Tom's presentation. Just very quickly, and moving back to the earlier points around paper in with green waste. Daniela will come back, but in essence, my experience is that all operators of waste facilities, whether they be materials recycling facilities, composting facilities, they generally operate to what we call strict input specifications. So quite often the ability of the council to recycle certain materials will absolutely be determined by the provider, and I suspect that will be the case here. One of the other things that we need to be mindful of as well is the animal byproduct regulations. So when you are generating composting products, it's absolutely essential that they are not contaminated through materials or items of food that may effectively destabilise the mix, if you wish. So again, there is a heavy technical element to this, but I just wanted to make reference to the input specification, because there are many facilities where, quite honestly, sometimes that there will be materials that can technically be recycled, and if you go into the supermarket, the packaging will say that this material can be recycled, but the actual processing technology itself is not capable of doing so, and that's quite often the case in respect of hard plastics. So things like margarine tubs, yogurt pots, for example, common contaminants. There are many sorting facilities that just simply don't have the ability to be able to recycle those products, even though technically some of those products could be recycled. So I'll pause there, Chair. Thank you for allowing me just to provide those supplementary comments, and I'll hand back to Tom and Daniela, who I think we'll move into the second stage of the presentation.
Yes, thank you very much. Thank you, Tom and Daniela. Please continue. Apologies for interrupting part way through. I just thought it was the right time to pause, but clearly not. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Following on from the presentation that Tom's just gone through, I'm just going to go through some of the strategy work that we're doing and looking at along with the national strategies and also climate change. For those of you that don't know, back in 2018, DEFRA published the Resource and Waste Strategy for England. It went out for consultation out to everybody, and it was their aim was to look at preserving the material resources by minimising the waste, promoting resource efficiency, and then moving towards a circular economy in England. There were lots of documents that were out for consultation that looked at the whole process and of where the waste comes from, to how it's dealt with with the residents, and then the end markets. Obviously, for us, we are very interested in what the impact is on the household waste collections. And as part of the first round of consultations, there were questions asked. They are looking at producing a consistent set of specified dry recyclable materials, which are the set. We have a consistent collection system across the whole of the UK, not just in different boroughs, so that we're all collecting the same and making sure that it is consistent. It was also looking at the residual waste collection. They don't want it to be any less frequent than 2 weekly. Also ensuring every household has a weekly food waste collection service and a non-chargeable garden waste collection service. And then going back to the councillor's point before about the extended producer responsibility for the packaging. So as part of the consultation, at how that material is produced, and what part of it is if it's made up of lots of different components that are really difficult to process, then they are looking at putting a tax on that. So hopefully moving forward, that more of the packaging that will come through will either be smaller or will be recyclable. And also, as part of the consultation, they were also looking at a deposit return scheme for the glass, metal and plastic bottles and cans. Again, this would also have an impact on our collections and our service. In the first round of consultations, we did respond through the consultation through GMCA. We put through all our concerns, what impact it would have, what we thought would be the impact on our service through GMCA, APSI, LARAC and RAP. Next slide, please. as part of that, looking at the curbside collection, they were looking at 3 different options of how we would collect your waste. So looking at how one of the options was to look at how is to carry on doing what we are doing, but provide a separate weekly food waste collection service. Number 2 is whereby they look at 2-stream recycling. So you have your residual collected, and then all your food waste, all your recycling waste put in one container. And then the third one was doing multi-stream. This is whereby we go back to curbside. I've got them in the wrong. Curbside sorting, so that residents could potentially have up to even more additional containers than they would be expected to sort it before they presented it at the curbside. At the moment, we are looking at all 3 different options with GMCA. We are working with a consultancy GMCA working with a consultancy company to look at what the impacts would be on local authorities, what the financial cost would be, storage, and how residents would present these bins, and the recycling market. We'd also be looking at the plastics that be collected, because they have mentioned possibly about collecting film, and also how this is going to be funded through the extended producer responsibility. So DEFRA in the first round of consultations were suggesting that the producers that would be taxed for the non-recyclable waste, that money would then be ploughed back into providing improving our services, and funding the additional costs for our service. Again, we are looking at the food waste, because that will impact on how we collect the food waste and collect the garden waste separately, because at the moment, as you're aware, we do collect our food and garden waste commingled. There are some new set of consultations due in March next year, and we will have a 12-week response time. So we will look to, again, work with the same partners that we worked with last time, and also produce a response as well from Bolton on that, and involve yourselves with that. Next slide, please. As part of the waste strategy as well, we also need to be aware of climate change and looking what we can do to improve our CO2 emissions. Back in August last year, the Bolton Council did declare a climate emergency, and are committed to making the local authorities' activities net zero carbon by 2030. There is a climate strategy being developed, which will come to PDG in the new year. Obviously, the climate change strategy will make links to the resource and waste strategy for England and the government's 25-year environment plan, which sets out goals for improving the environment, increasing resource efficiency, and reducing the pollution of waste. We also signed up to last year the Greater Manchester Plastic Free campaign, whereby we want to eradicate the use of avoidable single-use plastics by the end of 2024. There is a lot of work to do around that, looking at what the council, how much single-use plastic there is in the council, and how we can eradicate it, and as a start, try and reduce that, and look at more sustainable. I've lost my words. More sustainable choices about what products we buy, what we use, and looking at the carbon footprint of that as well. Next slide, please. And then there's also the Greater Manchester Clean Air Plan that we need to be involved in as well. So the Greater Manchester went out for consultation on their proposals, which ran from the 8th of October and closed last week on the 3rd of December. They are wanting to implement this by spring 2022, which is to reduce the nitrogen dioxide levels as much as possible. So for this is now where we're looking at, when we're procuring vehicles, making sure that we've got the most energy efficient, or using rechargeable or biodiesel. So we're looking at different options there. If we don't comply with the Clean Air Plan, there is the potential for some of our vehicles, especially in waste, where there would be £120 per vehicle per day charge. There is further information available on the link that I've provided here. Any questions? So,
thank you very much. So, caught me having a drink there, but it doesn't matter. First person to speak, Councillor Heslop. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. This is just a quick one. I was talking to our bin men the other day, the other week, sorry, and they were saying they have this unique situation where they have two separate compartments, and it's unlike any other authority. So when the purple bin, the beige bin go to they're collected on by the same vehicle, and they say that that's inefficient. And could you tell me, and that's unlike any other authority in Greater Manchester, could you tell me the reason behind that, and is it going to change? Thank you.
Hi, if it's okay, I'll respond to that. It depends on the opinion of inefficiency. With our recycling vehicles, we do have what we call a 50-50 split. So what that allows to happen is they can go around an area in one vehicle, collecting both products without the need to send an additional crew round to collect either paper or card. Now, currently our routes are designed with 50-50 vehicles in mind, and there is the argument that states we could potentially increase our efficiencies on the roads by moving to single chamber vehicles. I think with us, and certainly when it comes to the climate and the use of our resources, to do that now would mean us potentially, it will be increasing our fleet to react to that, because we'd be sending two vehicles around the same round each day. There are ways in the future to look at alternatives, but if you're looking at efficiencies, and certainly when it comes to climate, I would say that that's not an efficient way currently to run the service by sending two vehicles around the same streets at the same time. So these two arguments, if you was to go the other route and have single chamber vehicles, you could put more weight on the vehicle and collect more product. Theoretically, that means you could potentially then look at changing the lengths of rounds and making rounds longer. But obviously, there's a lot involved in that. Complete round redesigns. You're looking at resourcing and everything else attached to that. So these two ways of looking at it is what I would say.
Thanks for that.
Thank you very much. Have any other questions, Councillor Heslop, before we move on?
No, you can move on to the next speaker. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Our next speaker is Councillor Evans. Thank you, Councillor Evans. You're live now, Councillor Evans.
Thank you. Just in terms around the clean air.
Sorry, Councillor Evans.
Councillor Evans, it's John Duckett. Your video's just breaking up a bit. There must be a poor connection. If you switch your video off, we'll still be able to hear you, and it might make your question clearer.
Right.
Could you try again, Councillor Evans?
Yeah.
Councillor Evans, we can hear you, so if you want to speak, we don't need the camera.
No problem.
So you can speak now.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes. Yep.
Okay, I can hear you. Okay. All right. Third time. issue around emissions and cost prohibition against vehicles.
I'm sorry, Councillor Evans.
Into the idea.
You're breaking up.
You know, get me off. No, hang on.
Councillor Evans, there is an option to turn off all incoming video, so that should help your bandwidth as well. Then we might be able to hear you.
You could, Chairman, take Councillor Peel's question and then come back to Councillor Evans.
Yeah. Also, Councillor Evans, you can put it in the chat if you don't mind. But for now, we'll go to Councillor Peel and then we'll come back to you, Councillor Evans. Thank you.
Chair, before I come to my questions, it's clearly got a connection problem with the Councillor Evans. If he wants to ring me, I can hold my phone up and he can ask his question. You know, that might work.
That'll be fantastic. Thank you.
We did that before when we were all just getting used to this new fandangled way of working. Couple of points. I want to back up what Tom said in terms of the split vehicles. I mean, this was all explored many years ago, and this is, as far as I'm aware, the evidence I've seen, the most efficient way of doing it. The only issue, you know, the idea of buying additional vehicles and leading to an increase in the carbon footprint, leading to an increase in mist bins, because you've now got 3 sets of vehicles trying to get down a crowded street on recycle day. So the only issue I ever came across with that was neighbours unwittingly thinking that all the recyclates were all being mixed together in one vehicle and saying, what's the point of that? That was really an issue at the beginning when they didn't realise it was a split vehicle. The point I wanted to make was, Daniela, am I correct? I hope I'm correct in saying that the silly idea about separating food and garden waste, that has been dropped, hasn't it? No. Sorry.
You just on mute, Daniela.
Sorry, not very good with technology. No, it's still in scope at the moment. At the moment, we don't know what's going to come out in the next round of consultations. We've Bolton and Greater Manchester have definitely aired their concerns and what the impact will be around the consultation, and I don't think it'll just be us that have got concerns about that. I think a lot of other districts or local areas will also have the same concerns about that, but at this moment in time, as far as I'm aware, it is still in scope at the moment.
I'll continue. I'm really disappointed with DEFRA on that, and I do hope that this is abandoned. There may well be some technical scientific reason to do with how the green waste is treated with the, you know, it's sprayed with fast working bacteria, isn't it, to break it down. But you know, it's not beyond the wit of man to for recycling centres to work that out. The idea that you've got to put your leftover salad, your lettuce leaves in a separate bin from your grass cuttings is just stupid. And I think I know how Adele Warren thinks on recycling. I don't think we're a million miles away from our views, and I do hope that this is going to be opposed vigorously. And also, I think it's an additional resources, it's additional inefficiency for the government to start instructing us to do a weekly food collection when it's not needed if you've got a fortnightly green bin. Now, I've lived under both systems. I've lived in a non-garden property and had a weekly food collection, absolutely brilliant. And I now live in a garden property and I have a fortnightly green bin collection. The only time your green bin ever gets to capacity is in the height of summer, when we should be composting additional green waste anyway. And the only issue you get from it is your green bin, you keep it as far away from your back door as you can, because it gets a bit whiffy. Let let's face it, gets a bit whiffy, but there's no reason if you have a garden property why you need a separate green caddy collected every week. That again is additional cost, it's additional carbon footprint, it's additional vehicles making, in my opinion, unnecessary journeys. So I hope that is opposed robustly as well. I think the beauty about Bolton's system for a long time is it isn't a one size fits all system. I think it's been tailored over many years to respond to differing needs. That's why we have quite a good additional capacity policy for people who need additional grey bin waste. It's not one size fits all. We have thousands who get additional capacity, and rightly so. And that the final point. I normally agree with Councillor Walsh's vigorous enforcement type approach to issues, but the point I want to reiterate again is not only has the increase in contamination been showed quite starkly, but if the increase in waste in general has gone up, the increase in non-recyclable waste has gone up, the increase in recyclable waste has gone up, and it's all due to COVID. Therefore, the system that we currently have in place isn't responding well to people's different living arrangements, working from home. That's why I wouldn't favour a heavy hand at enforcement. I think, as Councillor Darvish said, hopefully we're through the worst of COVID and it will settle back down. I think the council's played it right by not going in with a heavy hand on this. Thanks very much.
I think John Dice would like to answer. Thank you. You're muted, John.
We should know by now, shouldn't we? But thank you, Chair. I just really wanted to respond to Councillor Peel, and I think some points really well made. The second round of consultation in relation to the waste strategy is expected, as Danielle alluded to, in the spring of 2021. And I think there absolutely are a number of issues that both we as an authority and across the wider sort of GM partnership do need to respond to. And you're absolutely right, Councillor Peel, that the proposals at this point in time are quite significant and far-reaching, both in terms of whether or not we are required to introduce a collection system which perhaps isn't deemed to be as convenient to our residents first and foremost, and clearly the risk of an inconvenient system is that we have lower levels of participation, which ironically would take our recycling performance in a different direction, and would therefore fundamentally challenge the strategy itself and its objectives. But I think you're absolutely right. The cost as well is a significant concern to us, and whether that be in relation to the separation of the different dry material streams that Daniela referred to earlier, or the requirement was a mandatory requirement for us to collect food waste separately. It's not just the additional resources that we would need to invest from a collection point of view, but at this time, at this moment in time, the Greater Manchester Authority, through their contractors, operate in-vessel composting systems. There would be potentially a requirement for us to move towards anaerobic digestion systems to manage the waste. So there are potential cost implications from both a collection perspective and a disposal perspective. And I think whilst the government have indicated that they will fund the additional costs, what we're not aware of, as is often the case with these things, is the detail, and the devil is always in the detail. So certainly the producer compliance scheme that Daniela referred to may generate additional funding which will be used to offset the burdens on local authorities, but we're not entirely clear yet. So I think it's absolutely right that when the consultation is published that we do thoroughly appraise it, and that we take the opportunity, as I say, not just at a GM level, and to be fair, they have made very strong representation, but we take the opportunity as a council as well to express our concerns and frustrations if indeed that proves to be the case in terms of the proposed system. So thank you for your comments, and certainly some points well made, and points that I suspect that we will reflect as an authority moving forward. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Peel, can I just ask if you can get in touch with Councillor Evans, because I want to give him the opportunity to ask his question, and I'll come back after our next speaker.
I will, Chair.
Thank you very much. Our next speaker is Councillor Warren.
Thanks, Chair. One thing I've noticed that no one's picked up on is the amount of containers that could be required. So you could be talking at like 8 bins. So now, obviously, for some of our residents, that is going to be a big ask if they live in a terrace property with a small yard at the back. So there is quite a lot to consider regarding the logistics of it, and the extra wagons, the extra crews required to empty them. And the idea of having a national strategy isn't a bad one on paper. The problem is that we do really well, actually, in terms of kind of where we've come in the short time in terms of recycling in Bolton and in Greater Manchester as well. Obviously, I spoke, one of the things that we were quite concerned about was the implementation date was 2023, and there was quite a big worry that if you had a lot of authorities clambering for bins or buckets or whatever you needed, and also then vehicle procurement as well, it could push the price up. They've come back and said that the chances are it'd be 2024, and that they're now looking at an 8-year implementation plan as well, which obviously 8 years is a long time, especially in the current period of kind of climate and the race to become carbon neutral as well. And there's so much kind of research going on at the moment, for example, with aviation fuel and using waste to actually turn it into fuel to create fuel for planes that's carbon neutral. So in 8 years, we could be in a completely different landscape in terms of recycling as well. So I just wanted to make that point. And thank you, Tom and Daniela, as well, for doing the report. It's really good. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. Right, so Councillor Evans is going to try again, and if he fails, he's going to ring Councillor Peel, so we'll have a great bit of communication there. So please, Councillor Evans, have a go. Thank you.
All right, I can see you guys. I don't know if you can see me.
We can, and that's much better connection.
Right, all right, brilliant. Okay, thank you, Chair, for your patience. Just in terms of the clean air element of the presentation, I know we've only touched on it slightly, but it still sort of sits in the back of my mind that the consultation is obviously taking place, and the current environment I know is not very reliable in terms of emissions and congestion, etc., etc. But I think one thing that I'm picking up on the ground in my day job is that a lot more people are going to be working from home. You know, this is a new world of work. It's not a one-off, and it's highly unlikely that this will be a single virus. So there'll probably be different strains, there'll probably be different ideas about how we contain it going forward. And I just wondered, from the authorities' point of view, have we factored that in to any of the current thinking in terms of, we've talked about the vehicles and the emissions that they produce and the cost impact in terms of fines, etc., or whatever it may be. But if there's I suspect, then may that offset the potential emissions impact from our local authority vehicle? And sort of feeding into that, what caveats have we put in, or are we prepared to look at as an authority? Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor. You broke up a little bit at the end, so hopefully we'll get most of it answered for you.
Okay, did you get which bit? Where did you get up to? I don't know where you got up to.
Oh,
hello.
Yeah, we can see and hear you.
Right. So the question over the clean air, to respond to that.
Yes, I don't know who's going to respond to the clean air question.
At the moment, we haven't done a lot of work on it. John might be able to help me out on this one. Obviously, we've been looking at it from our side of what the impact is on our vehicles and what the emissions are. So while we're currently going out for procurement for the vehicles, we are taking that into consideration and picking up those points. But at this moment in time, we've only been focusing on how it's going to impact on our service and what we need to have in place ready for should it go ahead. I haven't got any more information really that I can give you, I'm afraid, at the moment.
Okay, thanks for that. Are there any more questions? The chat. Oh, Councillor Evans, did you have any more points? I've just realised we're still dealing with your questions.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Wait for it to go right. All right, thank you, Chair. It was just a supplementary to that, please. Okay, so we haven't, as an authority, done any, shall we say, cloud bursting on it, on what the potential change could be going forward, in fact, the world of work. I mean, is there any possibility to work as an authority in terms of that? I know it might.
I'm sorry, Councillor Evans, you're breaking up again, but John Dyson would like to respond to the part that we heard.
Did you stop mute, John?
Again, thank you. I think Councillor Evans was if I picked up the it was a slightly broken message, but broken question, but I think it was in relation to the impacts of more and more residents working from home and you know, what impact would that have on waste collection services moving forward in terms of capacity. And I think you know, probably the honest answer right now would be no, we haven't done any particular modelling around that, but Daniela and the team do spend a significant amount of time collecting and analysing a whole range of weight data, and what we are able to do then is to obviously identify very quickly any increase in trend in terms of the amount of either recyclable waste that we collect, the residual waste that we collect, and I think at the start of the presentation you might recall that Tom referenced the increase that we'd seen in the kilograms of residual waste, general household waste, and that's undoubtedly as a consequence of more and more people spending time at home. You know, we also know, particularly during the early weeks of lockdown, that the sun was shining. Many people were out sort of in the garden. They were doing sort of home projects, and I think it's a fair point. It's something that we do think will stabilise, but equally it's something that will be perhaps a feature of work life moving forward. So I think really the answer to the question is that we will continue to monitor and observe the data. The data itself, and dare I say it, our workforce, they won't be shy coming forward if they think that the amount of waste that we have to collect is becoming excessive or impacting upon their ability to complete a waste collection round. There is no doubt that they and the trade unions will make that very clear to us at an early stage. But I think, as I say, it's the data and the intelligence that we hold in relation to, as I say, the different materials and the volume of weight that we collect over the course of a given period. In many respects, it's no different than, say, for example, the authority's ambitions with regard to new housing developments. We have to continually monitor and assess, you know, the throughput of waste and respond accordingly, and the principles are exactly the same. We have a piece of software that enables us to rebalance and reroute our waste collection vehicles so that we deliver the services at an optimum level, and that has due regard to the weights which each team are collecting. So we can see an increase in weights in one part of the borough, and we can see a reduction or a stabilisation of weight in another part of the borough, and the team, through the software that we have, are able to kind of readjust and reassign different collection routes based upon that data. But there is always a tipping point where you are inevitably faced with investments in the service to be able to respond to the demand. So perhaps a slightly long-winded answer, but I just thought it might provide some helpful context in terms of our approach to assessing the impacts of more people spending time at home. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much for that. Councillor Evans, do you have any more questions? We might try.
I'm fine with that, Chair, if you don't mind. I appreciate, you know, as long as we're monitoring it and we're keeping across it, I'm happy with that. All right, thank you.
Cracking, thank you very much. So we've no further questions on this, so on this agenda item. So we're moving now on to item 7, actions to address climate change, land and property assets.
And Joe Iveson has joined the meeting, Chairman.
Thank you.
So John Duckett, if you could put the other presentation up, please, I'd be grateful.
Hi, good evening, everybody. Speaking. John's going to take the first couple of slides, aren't you, John? And then I'll follow on. If that's okay. Thank you, Chair. John, are you taking this one?
Yeah, John, you can carry on. The slides up on the screen.
Right, okay. I didn't know whether I was live or not. Thank you. Yeah, thank you, Chair. Again, this again is a presentation which has environmental impact at its heart, and I really just wanted to quickly introduce this piece. And it is a short piece tonight. You will appreciate there are only a handful of slides, and it's very much an introduction really to the piece that we are doing at this moment in time around our kind of our land and property. And how we are beginning to address climate change through the work that the Corporate Property Services team are doing. For my part, I've been recently installed, if that's the right word, as the chair of the Council's internal climate change working group. And as a consequence of that, we just felt that there would be benefit in bringing forward tonight just a short piece, as I say, just on some of the work that the team are doing in relation to land and property. And I set that very much, as I say, within the context of the commitments that we as a council have made in regard to tackling climate change locally, and members will be aware of the climate emergency declaration in 2019. A key feature of the declaration, and it's not my intention to run through the entire piece, but just to draw out one or two elements of the declaration and the commitments that we made moving forward. It was to make the council's activities net zero carbon by 2030, to achieve 100% clean energy across the council's full range of functions by 2030. And perhaps importantly and most relevant to this discussion tonight, to consider other actions that could be implemented, including but not restricted to renewable energy generation and storage, increasing the efficiency of buildings, in particular to address fuel poverty. At a regional level, of course, we have the 5-year environment plan for Greater Manchester, and again, no surprises there that our buildings and our energy supply are key components of the plan. There is absolutely no doubt about it that the increase in greenhouse gases in the atmosphere, probably over the last 150 years, is the activities, contributing to the increase in greenhouse gases in the atmosphere are very much attributable to human activities, and in particular burning fossil fuels for electricity, for heat, and for transportation. So these are significant challenges. That's why the authority has placed the level of priority now on tackling climate change. More than anything, we wanted, as I say, to take the opportunity tonight just to set out a small piece in relation to land and property. Some members may be aware that there is a climate change strategy in development at this moment in time. That clearly is a significant step forward in terms of the authority's commitments, and linked to that there will be a number of key work streams and initiatives which essentially will respond to the motion that was, as I say, endorsed in 2019. The strategy itself is being developed right now. We expect to see a first cut of the strategy probably in the early part of the new year, and there is absolutely an intention to hold a policy development group in I think it's the first week in February. So members will have an opportunity to comment and to be part of the conversation in respect of the strategy itself and some of the key work streams. But as I say, there are lots of things taking place at this moment in time, and we really felt that there would be a great opportunity in introducing those pieces, and then perhaps coming back and having the opportunity next year to study in more detail the actual impacts that they've had. So without further ado, I will hand over to Joe, if that's okay, Chair, and Joe will, as I say, will provide us with an overview of the estate optimisation project. Thank you.
Thank you, John. So the SAMP, the Strategic Asset Management Plan, was approved at Cabinet in October, and I believe you should be aware of that. It's based on 5-pillar approach, but that is all underpinned by Bolton's commitment to carbon management and reduction. So Bolton and GMCA have commissioned 12 Trees Consulting, and it's Dr. John Hindler that's working with us and GMCA. He's also working on our climate strategy to support the aim of the decarbonisation of the public estate, which leads to the carbon neutrality by 2038. And by doing this, we're bringing in the expertise and the joined up working with our local and wider Greater Manchester approach. So for the purpose of this evening's presentation, I'll be focusing on just one of those 5 pillars, which is estates optimisation, and how land and property are working towards this target, of which I'm leading on. Next slide, please. This is an extract from the Bolton Strategic Asset Management Plan, and this is the action plan for energy management. I don't intend to go through this line by line, but basically I just wanted to touch on the background, which is the underpinning foundation for the SAMP activities is to develop and implement a socially responsible, sustainable and net zero carbon estate. This energy management plan will deliver a robust and economically sustainable estate through the use of innovative technology in collaboration with industry experts. And these actions will be monitored as part of the regular SAMP outcomes on a quarterly basis, and will be able to include energy savings that have been obtained and carbon reduction per tonne data. Next slide, please. So just to give you a flavour of the key activities undertaken so far, we've obtained the energy usage from Manchester City Council, who manage our utilities, and from this data we've been able to obtain a combined energy usage and intensity for those assets. And by intensity I mean that, for example, the town hall is one of our largest assets, so it will have high energy bills, but what we've wanted to do is do a pro rata based on cost per square metre, so that we can baseline across our estate, and then from that data we've been able to establish the top 20 high energy usage assets that we can now review in line with the stock condition surveys for each asset, so we know exactly where we're at with our estate, and factoring in those maintenance requirements moving forward. We're also working with GMCA and their appointed consultants to advise on data associated with our assets to see if photovoltaic, sustainable drainage are suitable in our assets, and also our asset owner types as well, to see what we can and cannot do on our buildings. Next slide, please. So using the above data, we've had the opportunity to obtain a portion of a government grant funding to accelerate our carbon reduction technologies and improvements. And we have been successful in obtaining funding to undertake feasibility work for 12 assets, plus we were the only authority to get heating network infrastructure works to be able to feasibly look at that and see what we can and cannot do moving forward. In total, there was 13 bids put in, the 10 GM authorities plus health, police and TFGM. So we received the funds and we were able to engage with our supply chain to be able to get that information back. And the surveys have now enabled us to put in a bid as part of the Public Sector Decarbonisation Fund to the value of 4.5 million to those 12 assets to be able to undertake heating improvements, insulation improvements, LED lighting, etc. We do find out the results of the bid. It should be on the 11th of this month, so it's actually in a couple of days' time, but I have been told there may be some slight delays on getting the results through, given that there's the 13 bids that have to be reviewed. But if successful, we will find out by, we need to get that work in progress by January and complete by September 2021. So it's quite a tight timescale, but fortunately we are ahead of the curve amongst other local authorities, because we have, as part of the SAMP, we have the clear sustainable framework in place to engage with our strategic partner Robertson's for delivery of this scheme, and also ACOM, who are a consultant that can aid with our design requirements. I'm also working alongside Tameside and Stockport Council, who are also engaged with Robertson's via different means, but to ensure that we have a consistent approach with our instruction to Robertson's and that we can get that value for money with the economies of scale against the three authorities, and also where possible to ensure that the local supply chain is given the opportunity to deliver this work. A project group has been set up to manage the process, particularly around the bid, being able to obviously hit the ground running in January. A paper will be going to ECM, Deputy Leader's portfolio, to obtain approval to accept the funding if we are successful, and obviously to manage the works through. I also have a more operational day-to-day energy management group that means that we link in our facilities management and capital programme works. So, for example, we wouldn't put a new roof on a school without looking at the insulation, for example. Next slide, please. So the next steps, obviously, first one will be to deliver the works if we're successful, but also in the background we will be continually doing an asset challenge to ensure that decarbonisation works are programmed in for the assets that support the SAMP. And by doing this, there'll be a programme of decarbonisation works to be established in terms of short, medium and long-term projects. And they could be real quick wins, you know, glazing refurbishments, you know, roof works, etc. But we want to map that out and be able to showcase the work that we are doing and the improvements that we're making. I'm also continuing dialogue with Bolton Council colleagues via the Climate Change Working Group, and also we're having regular briefings now with Councillor Warren, GMCA and other Greater Manchester local authorities, as I've mentioned, Tameside and Stockport, just to mention a couple. And that's to share best practice and secure a consistent approach. We'll also be continually reviewing innovations to achieve our objectives and the wider GMCA aims. And one current initiative we're working on is the appointment of energy partner providers to work as part of our strategic partnership to inform future projects such as solar, wind farm, etc. Next slide, please. So for further information, as I've said earlier, I am leading the energy management. So if anyone does have any questions, obviously outside of this meeting, as well as today, my contact details are there. Thank you, Chair, and I'm willing to take any questions.
Thank you very much. Just before we go to questions, I just want to remind everyone, if you are having trouble with your internet, you can actually phone into this meeting, and the phone number is it'll be in your calendar with the meeting event, and it's under the team meetings link, so you can use that to ring directly in, and there's a conference ID number which you put in, and you'll be allowed to come in that way, or you can ring another member who does have access, and of course we can take your questions that way. So thanks for that. So your next questioner is Councillor Heslop.
Thank you, Chair. This is, I want to see, I mean, the title of this particular part of the agenda was Actions to Address Climate Change. And Joanne, you will know I've emailed you today. I'm particularly worried about the land disposal, where I feel it'll be negative to climate change. We often hear the expression the lungs of the earth when referring to the Brazilian rainforests. I wouldn't exactly describe the Singing Clough part of Kersley as the lungs of the borough, but they do have a significant positive effect, no doubt, the vegetation, the trees on Singing Clough. In addition to being the part of the lungs of the borough, Singing Clough is also perhaps the liver and the kidneys of the particularly Kersley anyway, in dealing with toxicity. That many areas of the borough are affected because of past working methods with factories and chemicals and so on. What I am intrigued with this SAMP2 and land disposal is when we are aiming as a council to look at issues such as climate change, places like Singing Clough have been put on the list for being sold. So could you help me with that, please? Thank you.
I mean, thank you, Councillor Heslop. This piece of work I'm describing at the moment is around our existing estate. So this is looking at our buildings at this moment in time. The SAMP and the disposals is part of the capital receipts programme, the disposals. I just want to make clear that this presentation this evening is around those buildings that you know, we need to address in terms of their current energy usage. It's not to say we won't be looking across the piece, but this priority piece of work, because of the funding that was available, was to look at those buildings. But climate changes in terms of the disposals is something that is considered, and obviously as part of the planning process we would be ensuring where possible that we can, like you say, plant more trees, etc., and manage that moving forward. But this piece of work for tonight is purely around the buildings.
Will we get the opportunity to discuss it at this level, the actual disposal of land that is relevant to the address of actions to address climate change? Because I think that's really important that we get, before the the land is sold, that we get the opportunity to discuss the implications of selling this land and the effect on climate change of the sale of this land.
Yeah. And thank you. Yeah, I know you have fully engaged with the consultation process for the disposals. So certainly we do take it on board. If you do mention, raise that as one of your concerns, we can take that forward to discuss, obviously prior to going to ECM approval.
Thank you very much for that. Our next questioner is Councillor Wilkinson.
Thank you, Chairman. Just following on with the issue around SAMP, I think I said at the PDG, everybody was like, oh, it's a great plan, great plan, great plan. And I did say, it'll be a great plan until something pops up in your ward and then you'll change your mind. Because those of us who've been around for a long while know what happens when somebody wants to sell something. And that will be the case with this SAMP as well, when a building or a piece of land is up for sale. Just a few questions, if I may, Chairman, and I may try and stick to the SAMP related issues and then maybe just throw one or two extra bits in. I was very interested in the point around that Joanne mentioned around solar wind. Those of us who have the luxury of using the Bolton recycling centre will be aware of the UU's solar farm at the south side of the site. I would be interested to see what real opportunities there may be around solar and wind in terms of producing enough energy for ourselves as a local authority to meet our own capacity demands, such as around buildings, etc. And then moving on to another slightly different one, which John Kelly will be aware of, that is street lighting. The electricity bill has gone up significantly. Many local authorities have either turned their street lights off at certain parts or go on dimmer situations. The other question I would like to ask around SAMP is in relation to buildings. If we keep the building, it's the council's problem. I would be interested to know where we stand about buildings which may be under lease or an arrangement with community groups, etc. And there's quite a number of those across the borough, which provide an extremely valuable service for communities and also for the relevant groups who use those facilities. How does that tie in? Is it a council responsibility, or does the poor tenant pick up that? And two things is in relation to consumption and production. Some time ago, there was a Greater Manchester scheme around electricity, which was being put out there to residents across Greater Manchester, so residents could obtain a better and cheaper form of supply. I'd be interested to know whether we're looking at that, or is there any feedback around that, take up, etc. And the last one, my last point, is around Rakes Lane. Obviously, at the moment, Rakes Lane, we send the stuff there, it gets burned, it produces power. There was discussion and I think some investigation, possibly some expenditure of resources around a district heating scheme. I'm just wondering, is any progress or any information around that Rakes Lane one? Thank you very much, Chairman.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Councillor Wilkinson. I'll try and, I think I've remembered all the questions, but please, if you need anything else. So in terms of the solar wind farms and etc., we are engaging, actually, we've had a recent discussion with SSE, who have actually approached us with a view to looking at doing free feasibility work for us, identifying land and the opportunities that would be available to us so that we can explore that further should that be of interest. So we are progressing with that, and as I've said in the presentation as well, we're looking at making a more formal arrangement in terms of bringing in various energy providers to the partnership so that we can call upon the expertise and obviously get that knowledge as and when required. In terms of the SAMP and the buildings and whose responsibility around works to the buildings, we've commissioned condition surveys across the estate to bring our buildings up to a stock condition B. In that case, we'll be looking at programming our work to bring our buildings up to that standard. Obviously, it depends upon under what terms that the occupiers are under in terms of repairs and maintenance, but in the ideal world, we're looking at bringing them up to that standard so that when they are handed over to community groups and tenants, etc., the repairs and maintenance can be sustained. They've not got to outlay, obviously, significant cost. And from the 12 assets, actually, it's a mixture. We have actually got some community centres in there, children's centres, admin buildings, etc. So it may be that some of these buildings get the funding actually through this round, and we will be looking further down the line for any other funding opportunities. And again, I suppose going back to the earlier point around disposals, that's why we need to try and ensure that we're getting a sustained estate. So we do need to look at disposals to make sure the estate that we are left with, we can manage and take forward and ensure that it's sustainable. In terms of the consumption and the better supply and cheaper supply, it's something I can pick up with Manchester. As I say, Manchester do look at and manage our utility costs, but I'll certainly get some more feedback on that and revert back. And unfortunately, I don't know where we're up to with the district heating scheme at Rakes Lane. I don't know if there's anyone else in the meeting that has a further update on that, but again, I can feedback accordingly on that. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much for that. Excuse me. Councillor Peel.
Thanks, Chair. I suppose that I've been listening with real interest to the presentation, which I thought is excellent. I think the problem we have, which is underlined by questions from Councillor Heslop and Councillor Wilson, is the whole issue of climate change, etc., is massive, and this is just one aspect of it. Joanne's done a very good overview of what we as a council can do with land and assets, but it's a very, very complex area, and you know, it doesn't begin and end with this. I think it begins with this. I think the council must set an example and do what it can do, but it also needs to be reaching out and leading in terms of other organisations. So my first question is probably one that Joanne can't answer, which is in terms of the other assets in the town, which are schools. Spring to mind. You've got all sorts of opportunities there for schools to be some have already started, but for all schools to be doing all sorts of things to reduce carbon in terms of energy production and water and all sorts of other things. I don't expect the council to fund and pay for that, but councils certainly be a facilitator. I'm a big fan of what David Wilson said. I think he was talking about the council producing its own energy. Some councils do this. Some councils have either power producing sources, large power producing sources that they own or run, or they are major shareholders or owners of facilities outside of the borough that they then use to primarily power all their buildings, and then can sell off surplus power to others. And I would be interested in what our strategy on that is. I also think Councillor Wilson mentioned about the GM bulk buying of electricity, which has been a great scheme in the past. I've not heard anything about this in the last few years, but basically you have a massive advertisement campaign, thousands of people, tens of thousands of people sign up to it, and it enables GM to actually bulk buy electricity at cost from a company at much reduced discounts. It is definitely worth doing it, and I think from memory the Yorkshire Purchasing Organisation was also involved with that. And my final point, again, it's probably not for Joanne, but we do have our chair of planning with us, Councillor Walsh, and any member of planning committee who deals with repeated household applications and new housing applications will know what I'm talking about here. The frustration at the lack of progress with planning policy that addresses climate change to try to impose some quite innovative and strict restrictions on new builders to ensure that we go above and beyond what I think are minimum requirements for the government for energy efficiency, along with all the other things. So there's a little bit of combined questions and comments there, Chair, and I'd appreciate any kind of answers to that we can get. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Peel. I can answer around the schools to some effect. There are schools included in the 12, so 4 schools are included in the 12 sites, so they will have some funding as part of this round of bid. But also my discussions with Stockport this week, they're actually looking at developing a portal for all schools to be able to tap into that doesn't just focus on land and property, but looks at different ways that they can assist in the view to the climate change emergency. They've asked if we will pilot that scheme with them by proposing 2 schools, but then they hope to roll that out across. So regardless of whether a school is an academy, voluntary controlled, whatever the status, they will all have access to that portal. So I'm sure it's something that Bolton would want to support and include as a pilot. So there will be opportunities there, and we are reviewing all our assets holistically, regardless of ownership, just to have a look at what can be done. And like I say, some things could be short, quick wins really. We found that particularly around some schools where lighting is left on, all day, all night, and it's a case then of the education process through my team, where an asset management officer can go out and just explain obviously the implications of that. So it's not all bricks and have to do to the building. We intend to, as part of the SLA agreement we have with schools, have the education process and share ideas around how, because I'm sure schools would welcome reduction in their bills as well. Obviously budgets are tight. In terms of the producing own energy, certainly, yeah, absolutely. Like I said to the previous question, we are actively exploring these opportunities, and we will continue to do that, and happy to bring that back to any further meetings. I'll also will engage with Manchester around this bulk buying of electricity, and absolutely agree around the planning with the strict requirements. And I know now through all our ECM reports, we now have to include the reference to climate change, which I think is a step in the right direction, so we can address with every land and property transaction in particular how we're hoping to address the climate change associated with that matter. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Before we move on to the next speaker, apologies to Jerry. I didn't realise you wanted to come in after David Wilkinson's question. So if you'd like to come in now and provide further input, I'd be very grateful.
You're just on mute, Jerry.
Apologies. Chair, I just wanted to address some of the issues raised. I think Joe's done a manful job of trying to respond to all of them, but there's some difficult issues there. So the first one around Singing Clough, I guess the question to be asked is there more environmental damage caused by developing Singing Clough than by developing another site in the borough? If we assume that we have to build houses and that is a government requirement, then if they're not built in Singing Clough, they need to be built somewhere else. So this is a relative question which would need to be looked at in some detail. I don't think it's something you could just look at from the point of view of one site. The heat network, I can update members on that. The position at the minute is that we did undertake a feasibility study funded by the heat network distribution unit in the Ministry of Housing, Communities and Local Government, and we have identified a location potentially for an energy centre to supply a heat network around the town centre, around Bolton town centre. We've revisited that proposal because we want it to be completely zero emission. The most efficient mechanism for supplying heat networks actually is gas turbines, and we rejected that as a proposal. That was the conclusion of the initial study, and we've instead we're looking at more environmentally friendly ways of generating heat through air heat pumps. So we're working on that proposal now, and we also have to identify potential users of the heat, since there is no point in developing a heat network unless you've got people that are willing to take the heat and buy the heat. So we're engaging now with potential consumers, large consumers of heat, to ensure that they will get behind the project, and indeed they may even become partners in the project and contribute to the funding costs. So that's where the heat network is. I think we're just about to do the final feasibility study associated with that, and I would expect to be able to come back to members with a proposal sometime in the new year. Electricity purchase, we do purchase through a group arrangement with Manchester, with GMCA. We do benefit from group discount because of that. The challenge, I think, for Manchester and for us all is to now source that energy from renewable sources. So even though you're taking energy from the grid, you can still get a reassurance that that energy is effectively being supplied from renewable sources, and you can get verification of that fact. So I think GMCA and other authorities are looking to see if we can get that reassurance from the suppliers that the heat is that the power is generated through renewable means. And then finally, coming on to the point about renewable energy and creating it ourselves, as Joe said, we are in discussions around a couple of potential projects within the borough that might allow us to produce our own power. Clearly, there's a whole load of issues around that in terms of the environmental impact of these arrays, if it's solar array, for example, or if it's wind turbines. and where the suitable locations might be. So at the moment, we are actually just undertaking a very initial investigation as to potential locations for these type of facilities, and then thereafter we will look at them in more detail to try and work out whether or not they are cost effective and are fundable, because that's obviously quite critical that we're not, that we can afford to actually invest in these facilities, and not only get the benefits of renewable energy, but get the benefits hopefully of cheaper energy at the same time. So I just want to give members an update. That's I think I've touched on four of the points that were raised. If not, then members understand that they can always contact me or Joe, and we can give them a briefing on what we're doing. Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much for that, Jerry. I've also got Paul Whittingham would like to come in and contribute on the planning matters. Thank you, Paul.
Thanks, Chair. It was just to touch on the fact that members of Planning Committee will be aware that there's a requirement for biodiversity net gain on any site that comes forward for planning. So that would have to be considered for any site, a disposal site that comes forward for planning. And I think Councillor Peel's, can remember back to when there was Code Level 4 requirements, or Code for Sustainable Homes requirements, and that national policy has gone backwards, which is unfortunate. And we are hoping via the GMSF or in another form as part of a local plan to actually bring forward those sustainable development policies in the energy requirements in new homes, and make sure that those are actually delivered, and we get new homes that are more energy efficient. Some developers are actually offering those improvements ahead of the government requirements, but I do hope that that those will come forward naturally through the building control process as well as the planning process. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much for those contributions. Our next speaker is Councillor Cox.
Thank you, Chair. Just a couple of comments, really, based on a number of interjections that members have made. The first one on the SAMP, of course, no decisions have been taken yet. The first decisions are due on the 21st of December, and I think it's probably just worth clarifying one thing. A lot of the land that we are potentially disposing of is land that can't be built on and won't be built on, and it may be a farmer, it may be a field that was leased to a farmer. The lease has run out, and a neighbouring farm may want to purchase it from us. So I think it's a mistake for members to think that all the land that we're selling is necessarily for building. It's not. Another point is I did promise members at the start that I wouldn't authorise the sale of any land unless I visited it myself, and I have spent the last 7 or 8 Thursdays visiting all the different sites in the borough to have a look at them myself. I think 2 things have struck me. One is how much of the land or the assets that we own that we simply don't do anything with, and how many, I think it was Councillor Heslop described that the lungs of the town are actually full of fly tipping and waste, and are clearly not being managed. I mean, the ideal situation is that we use the sale of some of the land to improve the energy efficiency of many of the buildings that we own and that we intend to keep for a number of years, to keep them more to maintain them in a more energy efficient manner, and that would be a win-win situation, and there's no reason why we can't do some of that. In terms of producing our own sort of green energy, I know I've been approached by a couple. There are a lot of companies out there who are quite happy to do that and would like to do that for Bolton. I think what the issue is, and I think Jerry just touched on it briefly there at the end, is that it does involve an intensive piece of work, and of course no energy company wants to, you know, sort of put 20 solar panels in every ward in order to make it unimpactful. They want to put a large amount of solar panels in one particular area in order to farm as much energy, green energy, as efficiently as possible. And of course, you know, covering green fields with solar panels, again, something Councillor Wilkinson alluded to. People think that's a good idea, providing it's not, Councillor Heslop might say, in Singing Clough or in Kersley. And I think that is one of the issues that the council, I think, would have to confront if it wished to produce its own green energy, which in many ways is a very laudable aim, but it would require the council making a big strategic decision in terms of allocating a significant piece of land in order to produce energy in any significant quantity that could, in any meaningful or impactful way, save the town both money and impact in terms of environmental impact. But some interesting points raised, but I did want to clarify that most of a lot of what we're of the land and assets we're selling as land and assets that we don't manage in any meaningful way. They do provide regular costs with us, and actually they are potentially going to be sold to people who can manage them better and do nothing more than in many cases is graze cattle on. So I just wanted to clear that up, Chair. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Councillor Cox. And our next speaker is Councillor Warren. Thank you.
Thanks, Chair. I just wanted to thank Joe and all the team, really, that obviously it's a huge piece of work that's been undertaken, and obviously it is just the tip of the iceberg as well of what's kind of going on, and the strategic planning that's going on in the background, and fingers crossed for the 11th of December as well. I just wanted to come back on Councillor Wilkinson about the turbine at Rakes Lane. I told you I've turned into a geek. But there was obviously there was the fire at the facility, and that's been in quite a long legal wrangle between the insurance and Viridor, which was complicated further by Viridor being sold. So the parent company kind of that all changed, so that's complicated it further, but they have agreed a way forward, and hopefully the turbine should be up and running, well, they say the next few months, but obviously they're hoping within the year. But just to point out, that isn't a Bolton Council asset, so obviously it's a GM waste asset that would then be leased to Suez, even though obviously the way that electricity is produced, we would probably benefit from that locally, because obviously the further away that it's sold, the less impactful or the less energy efficient it is, if you like. So just for clarity, thank you.
Thank you very much for that. Now there's no further questions, and I'd just like to take this opportunity to thank everyone for the presentations and for the questions, of course, and the answers. So our next item on the agenda is item 8, members' business, members' questions. And as I'm sure you're all aware, I submitted some questions. I don't propose to go through them.
The questions and the answers were circulated to all members, and it's customary the person who's put the question in has the opportunity to make a comment if he or she so wishes.
No, I put the questions in. I don't think I need to make a comment. The questions were quite clear and specific, and the answers were very detailed, and I'm very grateful for the answers provided. And 8B is minutes of other meetings which are relevant to the remit of this committee. They've been circulated. If anyone wants to comment on them, you can do. Otherwise, we'll just note them. I'll just check. No comments. Right, thank you very much. And that, you may or may not be pleased to know, is the end of the agenda. And I'd like to say I wish everyone a Merry Christmas, and I hope 2021 is much better than 2020. It can't get any worse, touch wood. And I wish you all health, wealth and happiness. Take care. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman.
All the best to you, Doug.
Thank you.
John, can you end the live meeting, please?
Good evening. Thank you, Chair.
John, can you end the live meeting, please?
Thank you.
Thanks.
We're still live, members, so just waiting for the live meeting to end.
So not to say anything rude. Always gone back on again.
We are
Not to say anything. Still live.
Still live. I'll send him a message.
You're doing very well, Doug.
Thank you, Nick.
Just remember that the newsreader, you know, the camera's still on them.
I know. Well, there was one point, and I know this is still live, but it's funny anyway. I didn't realise it was still on me, and I'm doing other things. I'm looking at other stuff because I wanted to check that what I said about being able to ring in was right. So I'm looking at my emails and checking my calendar, and I come back, and it's on me.
Well, I mean, John Duckett can't end the live meeting. Just hold on. Presumably they're going to edit it before they put it on YouTube, though.
Well, you never know. We can improvise. We can do some stand-up comedy, but I don't think my jokes will be particularly good.
Well, I think Ian Mulholland can lead us in A Christmas Carol.
Sorry, Ian.
John's just put a comment on the chat. To remain live until I get back in. And I've suggested I'll end the meeting. And he said I can do it. So I will press end, and hopefully that'll end the meeting.
We'll soon see. Thank you very much, everyone.
Bye all.
Bye.
Bye.
Good night, everyone.